Hi all, welcome to Campedia. This is Dr. Karthik, and in this video we're going to see the final pillar of the GAMT-based learning, which is the recall strategy. Okay, so if you viewed the previous lectures, you probably know GAMT-based learning is based on three pillars. Creating GAMT is the first one, GAMT learning framework is the second one, and this is the final pillar, which is the recall strategy. You all may be familiar with what is called a forgetting curve. There's a famous German psychologist, Hermann Ebbinghaus, 19th century, in the early 19th century, described what is called the forgetting curve. So basically what he did a test on himself. He gave him some random words to remember, and then he saw how long he could retain that information. And what he found was that memory declined at a very rapid pace. After the initial 48 hours, you only remember 25%, 30% of what you read 2-3 days ago. So that's a very steep decline in the curve, okay? And it keeps going down until it reaches the bottom. So if you learn a new material and don't make an effort to recall it again, you're going to actually lose it forever. Right? There's a natural mechanism of the brain that you don't want to hold all the information that you need to know. Forgetting is actually a good thing, right? You don't want to remember every single detail of your life every single day. So forgetting is actually not a bad thing. But you need to find a way to make sure that the brain remembers the stuff that you want to remember in the long run. Okay. As you saw, two things that will keep stuff in the long-term memory, or if input is very detailed, or you have some sort of a recall strategy. What happens when you do a bit of recall is this curve changes a little bit. So you do recall here, goes up again, starts to decline like this. Go here, goes up like this, goes like this, goes up again, decline like this, goes up again, decline like this. So what happens every time you do a recall, the amount of stuff that you remember increases. So we'll rub this off. So the amount of stuff that you retain increases. So an efficient recall strategy is very important to avoid forgetting stuff in the long run. Okay. Now, a lot have been written, a lot have been published on this recall, interval recall strategy, which is better, etc. But there's only two things that's been very clearly established so far. The first thing is that spaced repetition is better than cramming. So what do you mean by cramming? Reading everything on the day before the exam, and then you go to the exam next day, and you're going to forget it in 2 days. That's nature. The second point that's very clear is that active recall is better than passive recall. What do you mean by passive recall? Passive recall is when you read about a topic from a book, you go back and read the topic again. You underline the topic, go back and read the underlines. You don't use any other memory techniques. You just go back and do the same thing again and again. So that is passive recall. Active recall, there are different types of active recall. We saw some of them earlier as well. So solving past question papers, problem-based learning scenarios, applying the information, teaching others, all these constitute what is called active recall process. But what's not clear is what is the ideal frequency for spaced repetition. Do you recall the stuff in a week, or 2 days, or 1 day, or a month, or what is the best way to do it? There is no clear-cut evidence as one benefits the other. The reason is pretty obvious, because there are so many factors that affect the memory recall. Is the person's interest in the topic, their previous known knowledge about that particular topic, and how strictly they are adhering to the content, the way they're revising. There are a lot of other variables involved. This makes it very difficult to draw exact conclusions. So what is still not very clear is the exact frequency of this spaced repetition. There is one school of thought that says you have to wait till the point just before you forget, and then you do the recall. Your benefits are better rather than recalling the next day. And then there is another group who says, listen, you just need to do as much as possible to get the maximum benefit. Active recall is better than passive recall. That is understood. But what sort of active recall? So we looked at past MCQs, problem-based learning, teaching others. What method is better than the other? Again, we don't have a clear-cut answer for that. What we know for sure is that using any mnemonics or any memory technique is better than using nothing. Problem-based learning, where you look at the problem and then you go back and draw the information back, is definitely better than just passively reading the text. Okay. So these are the basic concepts that you need to understand before we go into the GAMT revision. GAMT Recall Strategy. There are 4 types of GAMT Recall Strategy. The fundamental difference between GAMT and the other memory techniques is the ease of recall of GAMT. This is one of the biggest advantages of GAMT. Because of the infinitely easier way to recall GAMT, now you have a bit more freedom to play around with the recall strategy. People are trying to limit the number of recalls because it consumes a lot of time. Imagine, if you, let's say for example, so you have 10 chapters, and each chapter has 10 topics, just for example, right? You need to revise them before exam. So you have 100 topics that you need to revise for exams, right? Let's say in the traditional way, you're going to take 10 minutes, that's being very conservative, to revise each topic, right? That's going to be 1,000 minutes of your time to recall once. Okay, with the GAMT, it's going to be 1 minute. It's going to be less than 30 seconds, but I'm just saying 1 minute on average, right? So you're talking about 100 minutes. So 100 minutes is essentially less than 2 hours. On the other hand, 1,000 minutes is equal to 16.6 hours. This is for one revision. This is less than 2 hours. Let's say you have 3 or 4 hours per day to read per day. Okay, it'll take 4 days to revise in the traditional method. It'll take less than 1 day. So that's a massive difference in terms of the efficient use of your time. And you must remember, this is not the only subject you're going to study. You're going to have 5 of these subjects. So let's say 2 hours into 5, 16.6 into 5, 10 hours, 83 hours. So that is to revise content once of all the 5 subjects. Let's say you read for 4 hours per day. So you'll need 2.5 days to revise all the 5 subjects with 100 topics each. And you're going to take 20.5 days. 5 days. Say more than, let's say, 18 days. Now, again, these are all hypothetical. The power of the GAMT is in significantly shortening your recall interval. That's the true secret power of the GAMT. So GAMT and the GAMT learning framework by itself, by definition, has very high chance of staying in the long-term vault compared to doing nothing. Just because you add more details into it, you involve the motor component of your brain, you involve the creative part of the brain, you have a bit of dopamine hit with this, you're associating with all the other stuff already that exists in your brain. You're doing a bunch of stuff. Your your visual superiority effect, your drawing effect. You're doing a bunch of stuff. You're enriching the content that you're presenting to the long-term memory. So there's a very high chance it's going to stay in the long-term memory for a longer time. But then the true hidden potential or secret power of the GAMT is the amount of time that it can save you during the recall. So just with this rough example, there's a difference of 18 days. Like that's the day that you can actually go and watch a movie, go and hang out with your friends, play something that you love, and engage in a hobby. You can, it's as if you're getting your life back and more, right? Not only that, you're going to retain and master the content so much so that you're actually going to feel much more happier because of this. The GAMT, by making the recall very easy, exponentially increases the retention of content and also exponentially increases the time available for you. Right? It's very important to put that into perspective and understand the benefit of GAMT. Okay, so because of this shorter interval of recall that you get with GAMT, you can play around with the recall strategy a bit.